At my own Thanksgiving table, my daughter-in-law put both hands on my chest and shoved me backward into the wood stove while 22 people watched. My forearm hit the cast-iron door, and the sound it made was not a sound I will ever forget. She stepped back before anyone could see her hands move and said, "He's been unsteady all year, poor thing." And then my son, my only child, the boy I taught to bait a hook on a cold dock, looked down at the skin already lifting off my arm and said, "Dad, stop being stubborn. You're humiliating us in front of everyone." They thought they had finally worn down an old man who had nobody left in his corner. They were wrong about that. And they found out how wrong when I made one phone call. Before we go any further, my friend, do me a small kindness and tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Your town, your state, your country. I like knowing who's sitting with me. And a word of honesty. This is a story. The names, the streets, the people are invented for the telling. The lesson underneath it is not. My name is Raymond Alderman. I turned 74 in October, and I have lived in the same gray house above the harbor in Duluth, Minnesota, for 41 years. Nell and I bought it when the roof leaked in 3 places and the furnace was older than both of us put together. She died 4 years ago in March, on a morning when the ice on the lake was breaking up, and you could hear it all the way from the bedroom window, a sound like a freight train that never arrives. People around here think I'm a retired furnace man. I've done nothing to correct them. I drive a 2003 Silverado with a rust hole in the rear quarter panel the size of a dinner plate. I wear the same brown Carhartt jacket I've worn since Clinton was president. I get my coffee at the same counter every Thursday morning with the same 4 people, and not one of them has ever asked me what I did for a living, which is exactly why I like them. What they don't know is that Nell and I spent 36 years building a marine freight and dock services company that moves roughly a third of the ore tonnage off this lake. We started with one leased tug and a repair contract nobody else wanted. By the time I stepped back from running it day to day, we had 4 terminals, 190 employees, and a balance sheet that would have startled every man at that coffee counter. After Nell was gone, I made a decision, and I made it on purpose. I would keep living exactly the way I looked. Same truck, same coat, same Thursday coffee. I wanted to see who showed up when there was nothing worth showing up for. That November, I found out. 1. The cedar box sat on the top shelf of the hall closet, where it had sat since 11 days before Nell died. She'd put it in my hands with her thumbs pressed into my wrists and said, "Not yet, Ray. You'll know when." I hadn't opened it. I'd taken it down twice, held it, and put it back. There are things a man isn't ready to be finished with. My son Nathan called on the first Sunday of November. He's 41, sells commercial insurance, and has my mother's laugh, which still catches me sideways after all these years. He said Chelsea had an idea about Thanksgiving, and could they come by Tuesday to talk it through. Chelsea Vance had been married to my son for 6 years. She sold what she called luxury waterfront, mostly to people from the Twin Cities who wanted a view they'd see 9 weekends a year. She had a way of walking into my house and touching things, the banister, the mantel, the frame around the kitchen doorway, the way you touch merchandise. They came Tuesday with a bottle of wine I knew cost more than my grocery run. Chelsea talked for 11 minutes before she got to it, and I let her, because I've spent 40 years sitting across tables from people who need to warm up before they ask. "Ray, we've been worried," she said. "The stairs, the shoveling, the boiler being what it is. Nathan and I have talked about it, and honestly, we'd love to move in with you, keep you company. Take the load off." "That's a lot of house for one man," Nathan said, not quite looking at me. "And we'd take the upstairs," Chelsea went on, smooth as a hand across a countertop. "The master, the bath, the room over the garage for my office. You'd be so much more comfortable downstairs in the guest room. No stairs at all. It's really the safest thing." I set my glass down on the arm of my chair. "My friend, if you take one thing from this story, take this. When someone offers to move in with you and puts you in the guest room, they are not moving in with you. They are moving in over you." That sentence right there is where the whole rest of it began, and I want you to hear it before I go on. "No," I said. Chelsea's smile did not move. "No, to which part?" "To all of it. This is my house. I framed the addition myself in 1989. Nell picked the color of that kitchen out of a chipbook on the floor, with a baby on her hip. I'll decide what happens to it, and I'll decide it in my own time." "Dad." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck. Nobody's deciding anything. Then we agree, I said. They left before 8. I stood on the porch and watched their taillights go down hillside, and I noticed that Chelsea had walked out ahead of my son, which she never did. She had walked out fast. I've read people across negotiating tables for 4 decades. I know the difference between a person who has been told no and a person who has simply moved to the next item on a list. 9 days later, on a Wednesday, I woke up on the kitchen floor. I don't remember going down. I remember getting up for water around 2 in the morning with a headache like a band tightening across my forehead, and I remember thinking the room was too warm. The next thing I knew, there was gray light in the window and my cheek was against the linoleum and my heart was going like a bird in a box. I got the back door open and sat on the step in 19 degrees with my coat off, breathing until my hands stopped shaking. Then I went to the basement. The carbon monoxide detector at the bottom of the stairs had no battery in it. Not a dead battery. No battery. The little door hung open. Ah, I have replaced those batteries every spring and every fall since Nell put it on the calendar in 1998. I called Sal Petrosian, who has serviced my boiler for 22 years and who is the only man I let touch it. He came in an hour, and he did not rush. He put a mirror and a light up into the flue and he was quiet for a long time. "Ray," he said finally, "come look." The barometric damper on the flue pipe had been adjusted. Not broken, not corroded, adjusted. And then the counterweight had been slid and retightened so it would sit almost closed. "That's a setting," he said. "That doesn't drift." Somebody put a wrench on that weight and moved it, and then snugged it back down so it'd hold. With that damper where it was and the detector dead, that house fills up on any cold night when the boiler runs long. You'd have gone to sleep and not woken up. The basement was very quiet. Somewhere upstairs the refrigerator kicked on. "I need pictures," I said. "Every angle. And I need it written up, what you found, what it means, what you conclude professionally. Sign it. Get it notarized." "You calling the police?" "Not yet." He looked at me a long moment, then nodded. "Because Sal has never in 22 years asked me a second question. I want to be plain with you here, my friend, because this is the part people get wrong. 2 things had to be true at once for me to die that night. The detector had to be dead, and the flue had to be closed down. One is an accident. Both is a decision. Sal wrote that exact sentence in his report, and I have never stopped being grateful for it. Number 5. I letter note. I did not confront my son. I did not call Chelsea. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold and I called Odette Marchetti, who has been my attorney for 22 years and who once made a shipping conglomerate withdraw a claim by reading 3 sentences out loud. She listened without interrupting for 11 minutes. Then she said, "Raymond, I need you to do something that is going to feel completely wrong to you. Go ahead. You are going to say nothing. You are going to be warm, tired, and slightly forgetful. You are going to let them believe every single thing they already want to believe about you. And while they build their case that you can't manage your own affairs, we are going to build ours. If you confront them now, all you get is a denial and a smarter enemy." Number. I looked out at the harbor. There was a laker coming under the lift bridge, riding low, loaded. "How long?" "Until they overreach," she said. "They always overreach. Men and women who take from their own families are not careful people. They're impatient people who found an easy target." 9 days after that, Odette laid a folder on her desk and turned it around to face me. Chelsea Vance's real estate license had lapsed in July for non-payment and had not been reinstated. Her brokerage carried 3 outstanding judgments. Her business debt, across 4 instruments, came to $341,000, and one of those instruments had a personal guarantee with a call date in February. "She isn't wealthy," Odette said. "She's performing wealth on a schedule that runs out in about 90 days. And she has been showing your property to a commercial buyer's agent out of Wayzata since the 2nd week of September." "My property," I said. "I want," which she does not own, which she has been describing as a family asset in transition. Odette let that sit. "There's one more thing. And it's worse. Moss. 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 Wendell Boyd runs the credit union branch on Superior Street. I paid for 2 years of his tuition in 1997 because his mother worked our night dispatch and there wasn't going to be another way. He has never once mentioned it to me, and I have never once mentioned it to him. That's how a thing like that should be." Wendell called Odette himself. Someone had walked into a title office in Cloquet with a deed of gift, transferring my house from me to Nathan and Chelsea Vance Alderman, bearing my signature and a notarial certificate with a commission number that belonged to a notary who had surrendered her stamp in 2023. He put a certified copy in front of me. I looked at that signature a long time. It was close. Whoever traced it had studied it. But my hand has always cut the R short and lifted before the Y, and that R ran long and soft, like a person being careful. That's not mine. Dot, 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 dot. I said. I know, Wendell said quietly. I've got 21 years of your signatures in this branch. That isn't it. Odette folded her hands. Raymond, forging a notarial certificate is not a family squabble. That's felony forgery and attempted real estate fraud under Minnesota statute, and if it crossed state lines in any digital form, it's federal. This is not something anyone apologizes their way out of. I put the copy in my coat pocket and buttoned it. That was the 11th of November. Thanksgiving was 13 days away, and I had already decided I was going to host it. Chelsea called 4 days later, sweet as syrup, to ask whether I was really up to it. I told her I'd manage. I told her twice, and the second time I told her the same story about Nell's roasting pan I'd told her 40 minutes earlier, and I heard her go quiet on the line in a way that told me she was already texting my son. 22 people came. Nathan's college friends, Chelsea's sister and brother-in-law, Dorothy and Kemalu, from next door, 79 years old, who was Nell's closest friend for 30 years, and who has a doorbell camera aimed straight across the shared driveway at my side door because her grandson installed it, and she has never once figured out how to turn it off. I want you to remember Dorothy's camera. So did she. At 6:52 in the evening, I went out for firewood. I know the time because I looked at Nell's watch on my wrist, the little steel one with "Hold Fast" engraved on the back, which is a sailor's phrase and was her idea of a love letter. I came in through the side door with 4 splits of birch against my chest. Chelsea was standing in the mudroom alone, and she had been standing there waiting, because there is no other reason to stand in an unheated mudroom on a night like that. "Last chance, Ray," she said, low and pleasant. "Sign it Monday and everybody stays happy." "Move," I said. She put both hands flat on my chest and pushed. Not a stumble, not a bump. What? A push, with her weight behind it. The firewood went one way and I went the other, and my right forearm came down flat on the door of the wood stove, which had been burning since 3 o'clock. There is a particular silence that comes after a sound like that. 22 people in the next room, and for about a second and a half nobody breathed. I got myself up on one knee. My sleeve was stuck to the arm. Chelsea was already 3 steps back with her hands over her mouth. "Oh my God, Ray, I told you, he's been so unsteady all year." And Nathan came around the corner and looked at my arm, and looked at his wife, and made a choice. "Dad. Dad." He said it the way you'd talk to a drunk at a wedding. "Stop being stubborn. You're humiliating us in front of everyone." I stood the rest of the way up. I looked at my son, and I said, in a voice loud enough for the room behind him, "Nathan, I'd like you to take a good look at my arm and remember that you saw it." Then I walked out the side door in my shirt sleeves and drove myself down the hill. They kept me at the emergency department until almost midnight. Deep partial thickness, they called it, about the size of a playing card across the outside of the forearm. They photographed it under a ruler. They irrigated it and dressed it, and a young resident with tired eyes asked me twice, gently, how it had happened. And both times I said, "My daughter-in-law pushed me into a wood stove." And both times she typed it exactly the way I said it. My friend, if you ever find yourself hurt by someone in your own family, go get looked at, not because of the pain. Because a medical record is a dated, time-stamped, sworn account, written by a stranger, with nothing to gain. And there is no argument on this earth that survives one. At 9 the next morning, I sat in Dorothy and Camelu's kitchen and she poured coffee with her hands shaking and pulled up her doorbell footage on the tablet her grandson set up for her. The camera caught the side door and about 6 feet inside it, because Dorothy's porch light throws that far. You could see me come in with the wood. You could see Chelsea step in front of me. You could see her hands go up and her shoulders drop as she loaded her weight. And you could see me go down and out of frame, and you could see her step backward with her palms already rising to her face before I had even landed. Dorothy said, "I have watched this 11 times since 2 in the morning, and I want you to know I am not a woman who cries." "You don't have to watch it again," I told her. I emailed the file to Odette at 9:41. She had it with a forensic examiner in Minneapolis by noon, who pulled the metadata, the device signature, and the unbroken frame sequence, and wrote it up as an original unaltered capture. I did not fully understand at the time why she was in such a hurry about that last part. I understood 2 months later. Hold on to it. Then I did the hardest thing Odette ever asked of me. I got worse, not all at once. On the phone with Nathan, I'd lose the thread of a sentence and find it again a beat late. At the Thursday coffee counter, I'd pay with a 20 for a $2 coffee and then look at the change too long. Chelsea started dropping by unannounced on Tuesdays, always with a casserole, always with her phone face up on the table. The best of it happened in the hardware store on Central. I had known for 4 minutes that she was 2 aisles over, and I positioned myself in front of the furnace filters, and I picked one up, read the size, set it down, picked up another, read the same size, and set it down. Then I picked up the first one again. "Ray?" That warm, careful concern. "What are you doing all the way over here?" I turned around slowly and blinked at her like I was working to place her. "Chelsea, I didn't know you shopped here. Are you all right? You look tired." "I came for a filter," I said, holding up the one I'd already set down twice. "I can't remember which size the boiler takes." Nell always wrote it down. Something crossed her face there and gone, less than a second, and it turned my stomach, because it was satisfaction. She smoothed it over and told me it was the 16 by 25, which it is, and I thanked her and reached for it with a hand I let tremble, and I heard the small artificial click of a phone camera behind me. She thought she was being subtle. She was not. And I want to be very clear with you about what I was doing, because I know it sounds strange. I was not hiding. I was building. Odette had told me that the fastest way to prove a scheme is to let the schemers document it themselves, and every clip Chelsea took, every text she sent my son about how far gone I was a brick in a wall she was building between herself and any claim that she had acted in good faith. On the 9th of January, Dr. Everett Sohn conducted a geriatric capacity assessment in my living room. He was a soft-handed man of about 60 with a paisley tie, and he did not once make eye contact with me longer than a second. He asked me the year, and I gave him the wrong one. He asked me to remember 3 words, and I gave him 2. He asked me to draw a clock reading 10 past 11, and I drew the hands roughly equal and slightly wrong, which Odette had told me was the single most persuasive error a person can make. When he finished, he packed his bag and stood in my front hall and made a phone call he thought was private, 6 feet from a digital recorder taped to the underside of my hall table. "It's done," he said. No, it'll support a petition comfortably. Mild to moderate. I'll word it carefully. "Look, Chelsea, for 22,000 I'm not going to write you a novel, but it'll hold." A pause. 1. Easiest money I've made this year. I sat in Nell's chair and listened to my front door close. Then I got up, peeled the recorder off the table, and plugged it into my laptop. The audio was clean. Every word. The number, the name, the sentence about the money. Odette picked up before the second ring. "He named her," I said. "He gave the amount. He called it the easiest money he's made this year." She was silent for a moment. "Ale, Raymond, send me that file right now." Already sent. $22,000 to buy a medical opinion that I was no longer a person. Here is what people like Chelsea never understand. The things you buy illegally come with receipts you don't control. Nathan came alone on a Saturday in late January. I knew it was him before I looked because I heard 1 car door instead of 2. He carried in a glass baking dish under foil, and when he peeled it back, it was Nell's wild rice hottish, the real one, with the mushrooms cooked down first and the almonds on top, the way she made it every Christmas Eve for 39 years. "I found her recipe card," he said. "In the tin." We sat down. He talked about his job, about a trip they were thinking about the ice going out early. He asked how my arm was healing, and he did not look at it when he asked. And then, somewhere around the second cup of coffee, he reached into his bag and put a folder on the table. Dad, this is just protection. That's all it is. If something happened tomorrow, this makes sure somebody who loves you is handling things instead of a stranger in an office. I looked at the caption. In the matter of the guardianship and conservatorship of Raymond J. Alderman. Where do I sign? I said. He turned to the third page and pointed, and I signed. And I watched my son the whole time I was doing it. He didn't watch me. He watched the pen. The moment I lifted it, he had the folder closed and in his bag. He was standing before I'd set the pen down. He kissed the top of my head, said he'd call Tuesday, and he was out the front door in under 90 seconds. I heard his car start. I heard it back out. The hot dish sat on the counter, still faintly steaming. He never took a plate. He never picked up a fork. He drove 4 hours round trip with his mother's recipe in a dish on his passenger seat, and he used it the way you use a crowbar, and when the door was open, he set it down and forgot it existed. I sat at that table and looked at it for a long time, and my eyes burned, and it had nothing to do with the onions. Some people are so focused on the ending of the performance that they forget to finish the scene. Nathan played his exactly the way it was written for him. What neither of them had thought about was who was going to be sitting in that courtroom in 6 weeks. The hearing was on the 28th of February in Duluth, and it lasted 41 minutes. Chelsea wore navy. Nathan wore the tie I gave him when he graduated. Their attorney, a man from a strip mall office in Cloquet, who billed them $800 and had not pulled a single record, read, Dr. Soane's report into the record and asked the court to appoint them as co-conservators of my person and my estate. Then, Odette Marchetti stood up. She entered Sal Petrosian's notarized report on the flue damper and the missing battery. She entered my emergency department record with the photographs and the resident's verbatim intake note. She entered Dorothy's unaltered doorbell footage with the forensic examiner's affidavit and asked that it be played, and the courtroom watched my daughter-in-law put her hands on my chest and push, in high definition, twice. She entered the forged deed of gift with Wendell Boyd's signature comparison attestation and the surrendered notary commission number. And then she said, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd ask to play a 40-second audio recording made lawfully in Mr. Alderman's home on January 9th. I watched Dr. Everett Soane's voice fill that room. I watched Chelsea's face come apart in stages, like something built out of paper in the rain. I watched my son turn and look at his wife for the first time all morning. The judge denied the petition, struck the medical report, and referred the matter to the county attorney's office and the Board of Medical Practice inside of 10 minutes. And I want to tell you honestly, my friend, I did not feel triumphant walking out of that building. I felt 74 years old. Because it wasn't over. Chelsea Vance had a personal guarantee coming due in 11 days. The call came on a Tuesday night. Nathan's number, but Chelsea's voice. I have video of you at that barbecue in September screaming at Nathan, she said. I have you on my phone confused in a hardware store. Twice. I have you signing a document without reading it, and I have an edited version of the Thanksgiving footage that shows you swinging at me first. If you don't sign the lake property over to us Friday, that goes to every station in this market and every family court in this state, and you will spend what's left of your life as the old man who assaulted his son's wife. I let a long breath out of me and made it sound like a tire going flat. All right, I said. Send me the address. I want you to know I was smiling when I hung up. Here's what she didn't know. When Odette rushed that doorbell file to a forensic examiner in November, she did it so that the original, with its untouched metadata, its device signature, its unbroken frame count, its timestamp certified by a third party months before any dispute was already locked, dated, and in the hands of the court. An altered copy that surfaces in February cannot beat an authenticated original from November. Metadata doesn't argue. It doesn't get flustered. It just sits there and tells the truth about when a file was made and what was done to it. She had brought a fake to a fight that had already been won, but I let her think otherwise, because there was one more thing I wanted her to have. The lake property was 212 acres on the Cloquet River with 1,100 feet of shoreline and a lodge Nell and I put up in 1991. Any appraiser in the county would tell you $1.6 million and not think hard about it. Nell and I bought that land in 1987 from a family that had run a small logging operation on it since the 40s. There were two things about it that had never been on any listing sheet because they had never needed to be. The first was that in 1994, We enrolled every acre in a state-managed forest program that cut the annual taxes to almost nothing in exchange for a covenant. Break the covenant and any transfer outside the program breaks it and the deferred taxes come due. All of them, with interest, back to enrollment. Odette had the number to the dollar. 406,000. The second was under the ground, behind the old equipment shed. 3 buried fuel tanks from the logging days, discovered in 1998, reported by me, voluntarily the same week, and placed under a state remediation order that Nell and I had been quietly carrying and monitoring ever since, at a cost of about $900 a year. Remediation had been estimated in 2019 at $740,000, and under the order, that obligation runs to the title holder of record, not to the land, to the name, on the deed. You cannot sell your way out of it. You cannot walk away from it. It follows you until it's done. I signed the quitclaim on a Friday morning in a strip mall office between a tax service and a nail salon, in my Carhartt and my work boots, with my healed arm resting on the table where anyone could see the scar. Their attorney charged them $800, notarized it, and never once pulled the property's tax classification or its environmental filings, because a competent real estate lawyer would have found both in the first title search and refused to close without a written liability release. Chelsea watched me sign with her chin up and her eyes bright. Nathan looked at the table. I handed the pen back, thanked them for their time, and drove home. They recorded that deed the following Monday. The state's notice of covenant termination went out 11 days later. The Pollution Control Agency's notice of transferred remediation responsibility went out the day after that, and on the 4th of March, Chelsea Vance Alderman personally guaranteed a note that came due against a real estate portfolio whose only significant asset was 212 acres carrying $1,146,000 in obligations against an appraised value of 1.6. She had spent 5 months trying to take something worth $1.6 million. What she actually took was the rest of her life. The county attorney's office filed in April. Forgery in the second degree, attempted theft by swindle, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and, when the Thanksgiving footage came in alongside the emergency department record, assault in the third degree. Chelsea Vance was arrested on a Thursday morning at a coffee shop in Canal Park. Dr. Everett Sohn surrendered his license in June and pled to bribery of a healthcare professional. The strip mall attorney was referred to the state bar for the notarial certificate, and my son was charged too. I want to be very plain about that, because I know how this goes in stories. Nathan Alderman was charged with conspiracy to commit financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He was not a bystander. He signed the petition. He drove the folder to my kitchen table. He watched his wife put her hands on his father's chest and then told a room full of people that his father was the problem. Odette asked me twice, on the record, whether I wanted to write a letter asking for leniency before sentencing. Both times, I said no, not out of hate, because I have learned that when you protect a grown man from the consequences of what he did, you are not forgiving him. You are stealing the only thing that can change him. He pled. He got probation, 400 hours, and a restitution order. There is one more piece, and it is the piece I have not been able to set down. When Odette went through the holding structures Nell and I had built over the years, she found an entity we'd funded in 2018 as a silent capital partner in a small waterfront brokerage that was struggling to get off the ground. Nell had set it up. She had never told me the name of the firm, and I had never asked, because in 36 years I never once needed to check her work. The firm was Chelsea's. Nell had quietly kept her afloat for 2 years because Nathan loved her, and Nell believed people can grow into the person somebody sees in them. And when Nell died, that funding didn't stop. It rolled into the estate structure, and I kept paying it, every quarter, for 4 years, without ever knowing whose lights I was keeping on. Everything. I called Chelsea one time, in August, from the deck at the lake I no longer owned, sitting in a chair. The new order let me visit as a guest of the state's monitoring schedule. I told her about 2018. I told her the amount. I told her that the woman she pushed into a wood stove had built the floor she'd been standing on for 6 years. There was a sound on that phone I had never heard from her, not performed, not calculated. Just a person understanding the true shape of what she'd done. I didn't know it was you, she said. I know you didn't, I told her. That's the saddest part of it. 9 months later, on a Saturday in November, my son came up my walk on foot. He'd sold the car. He was working overnights at a distribution center in Superior, and he had lost about 30 pounds and gained something in his face I hadn't seen since he was a young man. He handed me an envelope. The first restitution check, $410. I'm not asking to come in, he said. I just wanted to hand it to you instead of mailing it. I looked at that check for a while. Nathan, I said, I forgive you. All of it. Completely. He made a sound and put his hand on the porch rail to keep himself upright. And I came down 2 steps and held his arm, the way you hold someone who's been underwater a long time. And then I stepped back, because there was one more thing he needed to hear, and it matters more than the forgiveness did. Forgiveness isn't the same as going back, I said. What we had before that can't be where this ends up. I said, you need to build something real now, not with my money, not standing behind somebody else's name, with your own hands, one honest day at a time, the way your mother did, the way I did. He nodded. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He walked back down the hill to catch the bus, and I did not call after him, and I stood there until he was out of sight. Then I went inside and took the cedar box down off the closet shelf and opened it for the first time in 4 years. Inside was a folded survey map of the Cloquet property in Nell's handwriting, with an X under a birch on the ridge above the shed, and a note that said dig 2 feet, and a letter, 3 pages, steady and unhurried, the way she did everything that mattered. I drove out the next morning with a spade in the truck bed and I dug where she told me, and 2 feet down I found a mason jar with a rubber ring still holding, and inside it a piece of paper dated April 1987, with 2 signatures on it, hers and mine, 28 and 29 years old, broke as church mice, and 1 line in between. We build it ourselves, or we don't have it. I sat down in the leaves with my back against that birch and read her letter, and I'm going to give you the only part of it that belongs to you, as much as it belongs to me. She wrote, a man is not measured by what he builds, Ray. He's measured by what he refuses to let be taken. Not the house, not the money. His dignity, yours, never left you, not once. 30. I always knew that. I always will. The woods were quiet. The river was low and clear, and the light coming through the birches was that thin gold you only get in November. And I found that I was smiling, not the cold kind, not the satisfied kind, the other kind. The kind a man does when he's kept his promise to the one person who never doubted he would. I'm still in the gray house above the harbor. Dorothy comes over on Sundays. The Thursday coffee counter is down to 4 of us now, but we still hold the 5th stool. I sold the Lake Acreage's story to nobody, and I've told it to you. And I want to leave you with the thing I wish I had understood 10 years sooner. I waited too long. That's the truth of it. I told myself patience was wisdom, and quiet was strength, and what I actually did was let the people closest to me mistake my silence for surrender. Every red flag I let go past the fast walk to the car, the hand on the mantel, the guest room. I called it nothing, because calling it something would have cost me a hard conversation. It ended up costing me a great deal more than that. Don't do what I did. Don't wait until somebody's hands are on your chest to decide your dignity is worth defending. Family justice doesn't usually arrive loud. Most of the time it looks like an old man at a kitchen table, quietly writing things down, keeping receipts, and refusing to let anyone who loves his assets more than they love him decide what his life is worth. If any part of this reached something in you tonight, tell me in the comments what you felt, and if you're carrying something like it right now, say so, because there are more of us out here than you think. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And if you believe the truth finds its way home eventually, subscribe, because I've got more stories coming that I think you'll want to sit with. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end, my friend. It means more than you know. One last thing, the stories on this channel, including this one, are works of fiction, written for reflection, and for the lesson inside them. Names, places, and events are invented, and any resemblance to real people is coincidence. If this isn't your kind of story, no hard feelings at all, go find the one that fits your life. But if you're still here with me, I'm glad you stayed.